As a teenager, I dreamed of becoming an audio engineer. That's what I thought I wanted to do with my life. I told everyone I was going to audio engineering school for college. And I did. And I did become an audio engineer. But I quickly discovered that audio engineering was just a pit stop on the way to becoming a music producer. It may seem like semantics, but if you stay stuck in the audio engineering phase, you'll miss out on making your best music. Today, I want to share the difference between the two and how to make sure you make the full transition to producer. Plus, I've got a bunch of audio examples as well, so let's dive in. By the way, in case we haven't met yet, my name's Joe Gilder. I've been running this channel 16 years as of this month. I don't know a lot of YouTubers who've stuck it out for this long, but I'm here for the long haul, baby, until I don't have any hair anymore. Shoot. In the early days of studio recording, back in my day, like way back, like 50s, 60s, 70s, the roles in the studio were very clear. There were musicians, there were engineers, and there was the producer. Maybe one engineer, one producer, sometimes multiple engineers, but typically like one main producer who's in charge of the whole thing. As home studio musicians, you and I get to wear all three of those hats. The problem is that some people stop with just the musician and the engineering hat, and what you really want to do is become a producer who also understands engineering and, of course, musicianship as well. So let's walk through that journey together. Let's figure out where you are on that journey and how to make sure we get you all the way to the finish line. The first stop on the journey, the first phase of this process is what I'll call the singer-songwriter phase or just the musician phase. This is my favorite phase. I miss this phase a lot. Just thinking about it, literally gives me goosebumps. This is when you first discover the world of audio recording. Everything is exciting. For me, I remember I was sitting at my friend's house. We had all hung out. I was in high school. We were all going to watch a movie. I got there early, and my buddy showed me some new software on his computer that allowed you to record and then record again. Record one thing and then record something else and then blend the two together. Multi-track recording as we know it now. My mind was blown. Do you remember the first time you encountered multi-track recording? Maybe it was on one of those 4-track cassette recorders. Maybe it was in a studio with a 24-track tape machine. Maybe it was like me with a piece of software, and your mind was blown as to what was possible. Obviously, that's different today. My daughters, who are 11, have GarageBand on their iPads, and they just do multi-track recording just for fun. I would have killed to have that as a kid. But when I discovered it, everybody has a moment where they see it and they recognize, A, that's really cool. B, I can do that. Why not me? Why don't I make music using this music production, the tools that are available to me? Because all you need is a computer, some software, a little bit of hardware, you're off to the races. So this phase involves a lot of learning, a lot of getting over the learning curve of using recording software, which if you've not used software like video software or audio software before, it can be pretty overwhelming. And a lot of people quit early. They get into it and they look into it a little bit more and think, nah, not for me. Or they buy some of the stuff, they start trying to learn it, and it's more frustrating than they expected, and they bail, and they go play golf or whatever. But not you and me. We stuck with it. Call us obsessive, call us focused, call us driven, whatever the case may be, we stuck with it because we knew we wanted to make music. I knew I wanted to make music for the rest of my life. Here we are. So far, mission accomplished. Let's keep going. But the goal here in this phase is to really get good at creating an instrument and a vocal. The singer-songwriter's song demo dream, record a good-sounding guitar, let's say, and a good-sounding vocal. Now, first of all, I want to say there's nothing wrong with simple guitar vocal productions. I think they can be some of the most compelling pieces of music you ever listen to. And they're a valid production choice. Some songs just need that. One instrument, one vocal, call it a day. But at the beginning of this phase, you're very excited. At the end of this phase, you start to kind of think, I think I want something more. This is good, but I think I want something more. When you reach that phase, you know you're ready to move into phase 2, which is audio engineering. But real quickly, let me play a demo of what it sounds like to be at the end of this phase. This is what a lot of your sessions look like when you're in phase 1. There's an instrument track, there's a vocal track, and we're done. And these, like I said, can be compelling, but there's only so much you can do with one instrument and one vocal. You can get pretty dynamic, play louder, play quieter, sing louder, sing quieter, but at the end of the day, it's fairly limited.
You're standing up there, and you're so scared. You just stare at the floor. And we're out here, ready to cheer, but you can't hear us anymore. I wish you would sing, I wish you would sing. So you clenched your fist and took a risk, but you...
So you can hear in that transition from that little halvesy chorus into verse 2, it got a little bigger. The guitar went from playing just the high strings to adding in that A bass note, got a little fuller, little more dynamic, but that's about as far as we can go. That's when you start to think, I wish there was more I could do. That's when we're ready to move into the audio engineering phase. But Joe, isn't this all audio engineering? Yeah, to a degree, but to me there's some distinct differences here. In this phase, you've spent the first phase learning how to do your voice and your primary instrument. Now you're opening your mind to, well, shoot, couldn't I add drums, bass? If I'm an acoustic guitar player, couldn't I add electric guitar? If I'm a keyboard player, couldn't I add guitars? If I'm a guitar player, couldn't I add some keyboards and some synths? If I'm a vocalist, couldn't I add some harmony vocals, some background vocals? Or what about percussion? Like, what if I get lots of percussion instruments? Could I do that as well? And the answer, of course, is yes, you can, and you probably should. But each of those things that you think about adding is like a new learning curve. Now you got to figure out, how do I get drum sounds in? Am I using software? Am I recording drums? If I'm recording drums, that's awesome, but I'm going to need a lot of mics and stands and cables to do that, and an interface that can accommodate. So it gets necessarily more complicated, and who's great at dealing with complicated things? Engineers. So you got to, even though you feel like you're this creative, flowy, free-flowing person, you got to start to embrace your nerdy side to learn how to do this audio engineering thing. You've already started down that path, but this is where it starts to get deeper. You start to deepen your knowledge. You learn about things like how to get things in phase and how to do mic placement and proximity effect and all these things that we talk about. This is where you really start to deepen that knowledge. And the downside is this is where it can start to become less fun because you're adding in new stuff that you don't know how to do yet. And when you don't know how to do something, you're not very good at it in the beginning. You'll discover things like doubling. Take your one guitar that you're really good at, now double it. Suddenly you've got some stereo awesomeness happening. So at the beginning of this phase, your mantra is, I want more. At the end of this phase, you've entered what I'll call the all skate zone. And that's when, do you remember growing up, did you go to the skating rink as a kid? I did, all the time. We had birthday parties there. And they would have couples skate, boys only skate, girls only skate, and then most of the time was all skate, where everybody just gets out there and somebody inevitably starts bleeding because they didn't even have pads on the rails. There were these red metal rails around the skating rink just asking for you to knock a tooth out. That would not, I doubt that it's still there today. If anybody's in Yazoo City, Mississippi, let me know. Is that skating rink that was just outside of town, is it still there? Surely it's not. So all skate. This is a term I learned from my Nashville session buddies. When we would be doing a session, if the song began and we decided everybody's going to come in from the top of the song, we called that an all skate. Everybody in, everybody playing at the same time. The problem is when you're new to recording, you tend to, when you add new instruments, you tend to play them from the beginning of the song all the way to the end. So everything that you add starts at the downbeat and continues through the entire song. And it makes sense when I'm playing at a singer-songwriter event. If I'm playing at Bluebird Cafe, for example, I'm playing my guitar for the entire song. So it makes sense that my default mode, when I'm learning to produce, learning to engineer, when I want to add another instrument, I play it from start to finish. That just makes sense. That seems like the default mode. You've got to kind of relearn how things work when you start adding multiple instruments. 2 instruments, you can probably have them both play throughout. When you start adding lots of instruments, you have to start thinking more like a band and less like a singer-songwriter. Think in terms of, what if the whole band dropped out for the first verse? And then what if drums and bass came back in for the chorus? And then what if the full band was finally back in by verse 2? These are the kind of questions and decisions we think about when we get into being a producer versus an audio engineer. Audio engineer makes it sound good. Producer make sure you record the right parts. And we're going to get to that in a second. But first, let me give you a quick example of an all skate. Here's an example of an all skate from the song we're using earlier. This is 3 acoustic guitars, one up the middle, one left, one right. and some percussion instruments all just kind of playing together with the vocal.
You would sing, I wish you would sing. 'Cause we need to hear a story that only you can tell, and you tell it so well.
So there's nothing technically wrong with that. You could be done, submit that as your final version, and release it to the world, and it'd be nice. It's nice. I would say it feels more like a demo than a production. Here's what I mean. These guitars, for example, they're all pretty much just playing the same thing. Different voicings, different panning, but it's the same rhythm. It's more of the same, which can be a valid approach. And then the percussion is pretty straightforward. Couple shakers, couple tambourines, and a djembe of all things. So it's a nice start. But to me, this is where the engineering phase ends. We've kind of made some really good sounding stuff. But if it's this for the entire song, start to finish, by the second verse or chorus, people are going to be kind of bored, ready for something new, something to change, something different. If it's this for 4 minutes, we got a snooze fest on our hands. That's why we need to transition out of this engineering only phase into being a producer and actually producing this song. Let's talk about that. Before we jump into the third phase, if you'd like the examples I've shown you in this video, I've actually created a full training course where I take you on a deep dive tour of several songs that I've produced, walking you through the creative decision-making process. In other words, how did I think through adding these parts? When did I add them? What was the thought process behind it? You can get access to that course. It's called Understanding Production, along with lots of other bonus materials when you take my VIP Gold membership for a test drive. Try it out for a full month for free. My gift to you. Just go to homestudiocorner.com/VIP. Okay, phase 3 is the producer phase. We've already talked about it a little bit. This is where you live. You kind of transition through the other phases, keeping the lessons you've learned along the way. But this is where you plop yourself down for the rest of your life as a music producer. And the thing about a producer is a producer thinks differently than an engineer. A producer thinks in terms of parts instead of chords. The all skate, everybody's just playing through the chord chart. It's fine. Gets kind of boring. A producer thinks in terms of parts. What can the different parts be? When do they come in? When do they go away? A producer is thinking in terms of dynamics versus all skate. Kind of the same idea, parts versus chord, dynamics versus an all skate. And then producers are thinking in terms of hooks and variations. How can I add something different that hasn't been heard before in this song to keep the listener interested? How can I make this interesting and engaging from start to finish? If it's the same thing, same vibe, same sound, same energy level from start to finish, the listener might get bored. But if we can vary things, suddenly we can do there's lots that we can do between the start of the song and 4 minutes later to keep the song interesting, exciting, and engaging for the listener. There are 3 kinds of variations that you can add to the song. Think about melody, harmony, and rhythm. First, melody. Can we add some melodic elements into this? It can be as simple as a very simple guitar part that plays a melody. It can be an electric guitar lead part that comes in between vocal phrases. It can be a synth part that's melodic. It can even be like the bass line can be melodic. As many places where you can add in some melody, you might call it a riff. The more of those you have, obviously you could overdo it, but typically give people something to hum and your song will be more engaging and more memorable. Melody. Harmony. Harmony, how can we change the voicing of what's in there? We can add like vocal harmonies to the vocal. That's an obvious one. But what are other harmonic variations we can add? Maybe we've got a bunch of stuff that's playing these chords kind of down in that thick zone of the keyboard. Maybe we add in some nice bright guitars that are playing different harmonic content. Same basic chords, maybe different voicings that are up higher that will cut through the mix and will blend nicely with what we already have. And so that's melody, that's harmony. The third thing is rhythm. What can we change up rhythmically? I showed you those guitars. They're all going bum da ba da bum ba da ba dum ba ba dum ba da ba dum ba da ba dum. We got that rhythmic piece locked down. I don't need that anywhere else. If I add a piano part and it goes blang bling blang ding blangy blank, that's too much of the same rhythm. If everybody plays that rhythm, it gets old real quick. But it's the default. It's the first thing you think of because that's what you've been playing the whole time. So you got to break away from that and think in terms of what's a different rhythm. What's a different rhythm that I can play on this song that won't make things overly busy or unnecessarily complex, but will complement the two nicely. To me, the idea, when I transition into this phase, when you transition into this phase, you're thinking in terms of this is a production versus just a song demo. People use the phrase song demo all the time, and I don't like that phrase because it almost feels throwaway. Like, yeah, we didn't really try on this. We just wanted you to get a vibe for the song. That's fine. There are different reasons to do song demos. But for me, I want to produce the song. I want it to be a finished, proper, hard-hitting, tear-jerking production versus just here's what the song sounds like. If it may seem like semantics, but that shift in thinking really helps you really go for it with your songs. So this is the phase where you live. When you get to being a producer, you're here for the rest of your life. This is where all the fun is. Yes, it was fun in the beginning when you discovered that you could record your guitar and your vocal. Yes, it's fun when you start to learn how to record other things, but it all comes together when you take on and fully embrace the role of producer. Then the sky's the limit, and you're always learning. Everything you listen to on Spotify, Apple Music can be your teacher to teach you new production tricks because it's all out there for free. You just get to listen to it, which is glorious. Now, one quick point. I'm not talking about overproducing. It can be as little as one or two well-placed elements that can take a song that's kind of boring and repetitive and can lift it to something interesting and engaging. It doesn't have to be hundreds of tracks just to make it interesting. It can just be one or two little extra things that you add in that can make all the difference. Let me demonstrate for you here. This is what we listened to before, kind of the all-skate example. Let me unhide all the other tracks in this song. This song is still very much an acoustic production, but I added a lot more than just those three guitars, for example, to make it a little bit more interesting. None of these parts are earth-shattering. I'm not a guitar virtuoso, and I don't have to be to produce really interesting music. But for example, let's just see what other things I added. For example, coming out of this chorus. So when the song ends, we've got an outro. Currently, it's kind of a snooze fest.
And you tell it so well.
It's asking for something different. First thing I try to add sometimes is, as far as a little bit of a rhythmic variation, is what if I added in just some diamond guitar? So in Nashville Numbers chart, when you put a diamond around a chord, it's just a whole note. You just go bring. So what if I add that in? What would that do to this end of the song? It's very simple. If you can play guitar, you can play that, but that adds just a little element of almost like a little cymbal swell every measure. Not that different, not that hard, but it adds a little bit of an element. From a melodic and rhythmic standpoint, what if I added in some sort of melody, and I actually ended up adding in 3 melodies. The first melody is here. It's just the notes that I sing in the vocal, and then I double it up high. That simple little melody that's not that difficult to play adds so much to the end of the song. And then I thought, well, there's a space between those phrases where nothing's happening. What if I added another guitar that kind of fills in those gaps? A lot of times, like what bluegrass musicians do. Someone leans in and plays a riff, and then they lean back and someone else leans in and fills that gap. What could we fill in with this gap here? And this is what I came up with. So by themselves, I'm not winning any guitar player awards with those simple parts. But when you add all those in with the production, And the final piece is I thought there could be more rhythmic, just kind of a chicka, 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 chicka. I've got that with the shaker. I don't want to turn the shaker and the tambourine up, but what if I recorded some like really high parts on the guitar, just going blingy, 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 and then maybe added some delay to those. So I recorded 2 of those, panned them left and right. They sound like this. So that just continues, but add that in with everything else, and you get this pretty interesting rhythmic kind of extra bounciness to it. Same section of the song, same basic feel for the song, but by adding those, 5, 6, 7, 8 elements, we've added all sorts of more interesting things to the song. And if you want to hear this whole song, it's called Sing. Look up my name, Joe Gilder. It's on the album called Rain. You can see this song is not an all skate. It doesn't start with everybody playing and continue. You can see where pieces come in and out throughout the song. Those same elements I showed to you there, I introduced them at different points throughout the song, but they all kind of culminate here in the bridge, and then here at the end we've got all of them playing together nicely. Gives the song a nice sense of direction. So it starts off real simple, and then things start to add in as we go. All right, that's it for this video. If you haven't taken advantage of my free month of VIP Gold, my gift to you, go check that out at homestudiocorner.com/VIP. And if you haven't seen this video on some recording tips I wish I'd known a lot earlier, check it out now. Thanks for watching. See ya.